Welcome back, fight fans. My name is Yoink, and you are watching Sunday Night Fights. I'm joined by my special guest co-host Inverse, and Inverse and Ami just shoutcasted an unbelievable Game 1 between Symbiosis and Fir3ball. This best-of-5 series is going to determine who will challenge Dev M in the finals next week. Inverse, what happened to Fir3ball in Game 1?
I don't know, man. I mean, he had it. He had it. I don't know what else to say, but he had it. He did everything in his power to lose that game. There were 10 different things he had to do in order to lose that game, and he did every single one of them. And I mean, when something like that happens against a player of Symbiosis' caliber, you really can't come back.
Yeah, we were chit-chatting during the commercial break what happened, and the three of us had decided that there were about 10 things that Fir3ball had to do wrong to lose that game, and he did about 10 things wrong to lose the game. It was unbelievable. You had commented also, Inverse, that it all kind of went downhill when Fir3ball's sniper went down, and as I was watching that game, I sort of had made that same analysis as well. It seemed to fall apart at that point, and Fir3ball sort of lost control of his own army. He didn't seem to have a vision as to what he wanted his army to look like, and it sort of degraded down into a group of riflemen running around trying to cap victory points, and it was a desperate attempt to claw back that he just could not get himself out of his hole. So they're going to go at it again, same map, different factions this time. Symbiosis is going to play the Americans in the south, and Fir3ball is going to play the Wehrmacht in the north. Who do you want to follow?
I'll be taking a look at Aljaz up in the north.
Okay, Aljaz in the north, Symbiosis in the south. If our cameraman and director Budwise can show us the game map, I want to get this game started as soon as possible, because I'm sure that we want to find out how Fir3ball can come back, or if Symbiosis can hold on to his now 1-0 lead in this best-of-5 series. So are you ready at 5 seconds?
Absolutely.
Then I'm going to count us in here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. And the clock is ticking at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And there's the good luck, have fun, GG, you two, both clanmates from the All-Stars clan. Earlier I thought that they were the Awesome clan. But the first thing that I want to note here is Symbiosis is double building engineers. And he set his first out to go run way up into the graveyard and cap. What's going on with that?
I actually played a practice game with Symbiosis on this map against his Americans, and he was practicing a variation of the 4-engineer racks opening. He's been having some trouble, he told me, against Aljaz and his super expansive, super extensive Tier 1 play. Aljaz loves his Tier 1 units. He routinely gets 6, 7, even 8 Tier 1 units, and Symbiosis has been trying out different things in order to counter that, and came up with a fairly aggressive early game with a lot of engineers, a lot of rifles, and a lot of upgrades. We'll see if he sticks to that plan or if he deviates.
So do you think that perhaps this thing that Symbiosis is doing is the 3-engineer, 3-rifleman sort of strat that we kind of saw somebody try and do last week, but he couldn't pull it out? I think it was Aimstrong tried to do it and couldn't make it happen.
It absolutely could be. Now, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd actually be more surprised if it were only 3 rifles as opposed to 4 rifles. But either way, I wouldn't put it past Symbiosis to throw a curveball in there every once in a while. I mean, they are clanmates. They do practice a lot, even if they haven't been practicing a lot recently. They have practiced a lot historically.
Okay, we're experiencing a little bit of a technical difficulty. Our cameraman and director Budwise wants us to give him a pause at 2 minutes, which we're coming up here in 3, 2, 1. Pausing. We've now paused the game. He's going to take a moment here to correct a situation that he's got with his camera. But talking a little bit about so far what we've seen in this game, Inverse, the thing that I'm interested in is how Symbiosis has pushed all the way up into the left-hand side of the map here. It seemed like his strategy was to connect 3 points along the left-hand side very quickly, and then hold on to that graveyard as long as he possibly could. Do you think that's going to probably be his axis of assault here on this map?
I do. I think his thinking is going to be very similar to Fir3ball's in the previous game, where his goal was to focus on this plus 10 fuel on the left-hand side. The rightmost fuel is fairly easy to defend, but this left-hand side fuel is a lot more difficult for the Wehrmacht player, and if the American player can harass it constantly, it can be difficult for the Wehrmacht player to tech.
Good observation, good observation. And it sounds like Budwise, our director, is ready to go again. So I'm going to count us down here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start. And the clock is ticking again at 3, 4, 5, 6. I think we're all synced up, yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we were talking about the left-hand side and the graveyard. Most units now have left this sort of area of the left here, and now the only combat we see here is in the center, rifles versus Volks in green cover. This engagement is going to go better for the rifles. They're much, much closer than they should be for these Volks, so it's going to be a long, slow death here for these Volks. However, backup German reinforcements have joined the battle, and now rifles are outnumbered and have to retreat. They're going to go right off the field.
It's interesting to see how Symbiosis has switched his focus, moving over to the right-hand side now, realizing his ploy to try and prevent his opponent from capping that plus 10 fuel didn't exactly pay off entirely, and it left him with a lack of map control on the right-hand side. You'll notice he doesn't even have this plus 16 down on the bottom capped yet, because he sent a lot of units up on this left-hand side very early. It's not too big a deal this early in the game, but it is going to impact his manpower in a negative way.
Well, you know, Americans need to keep map control as fast and as dominant as possible. The early game is better for them, obviously, to keep that map control going. Fir3ball had almost closed the noose last game, obviously, with the amount of map control that he had. He just couldn't make it happen. And now we've got more combat here around the lumberyard. We almost never see combat on the Aryaton lumberyard. And these rifles here are going face-to-face with Volks Grenadiers. Now, see, when I play, I always like to focus fire down the engineers, or I should say the pioneers first, which is exactly what Symbiosis was trying to do, and then he just couldn't make it happen, and it looks like he had to retreat those rifles out of there. Still more combat though here in the lumberyard.
Absolutely. And Aljaz, though, has an absolutely dominant position on this right-hand side. He's also managed to keep his opponent off his fuel on the left-hand side. So all in all, his map control is in an excellent spot. He's doing also a variation of his standard tier 1, which is usually Volks, MG, Volks, Volks, MG, Volks, for a total of 4 Volks and 2 MGs before he begins any sort of tech. He got 2 Volks a little bit earlier simply because the size and layout of the map makes mobility a prime asset. And MGs, obviously, aren't exactly that mobile.
Right, well, I did see his MG, I heard an MG firing somewhere. I'm not really sure where it is now on the map. He was using it, oh, it's up in the graveyard. He's just sort of using it. I think he was capping a point up by the graveyard. Now we're seeing both guys here kind of sorting around the map. It looks like, you know, I was going to say that it looks like Symbiosis is interested in sort of holding on to this. He's going to try and make his advance here on the right-hand side, maybe up the middle as well. These riflemen are going to try and engage Volks Grenadiers in green cover here. You know, these houses provide such incredible line of sight, and you can see your Symbiosis is jumping into one of these houses. This is a critical component to controlling the center part of the map, and down comes this MG42 now here to engage these rifles as they move up. I wonder if both men are a little bit leery about losing victory points. Like, last game really could have been a catastrophe in victory points if, you know, Fir3ball had gotten those munitions points down at the last minute.
Enemy unit down.
Absolutely. And we're already seeing the benefits of Aljaz's very extensive and very aggressive tier 1 play. He has a lot of map control, far more so than Symbiosis really had in the early game, because he's overinvested in this early game tech. And that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for him to tech later, because he spent a lot of manpower in the early game, but it gives him a lot of map control, and it gives him dominance in teching because he has so much fuel. I mean, he has 127 fuel right now. Absolutely ridiculous amount of fuel, and he's getting his 4th Volks. So he now has the tier 1 composition he needs, and the tier 1 composition he is so used to.
Well, this is just, it's unbelievable. I mean, look at the control that the German army has on the field. He's basically got units at just about every single point. The axis extends all the way across the map. Anywhere that Symbiosis attempts to try and push forward into German territory, he's going to be met with resistance. That's actually extremely horrifying for an American player to know that anywhere your rifles go, they're going to go face first into an MG42 or Volksgrenadiers, especially when you've got rifles coming out of your base and they're under strength. There's no triage center in there, so they're just going to start to get, it's just going to be a huge manpower bleed wherever you go into combat, like we're seeing right now just outside the lumberyard. There's a flank in progress here, but it's not going to be able to be executed correctly because these Volksgrenadiers are going to defend this MG42 easily, pushing off those rifles.
Absolutely, and this is one of the primary strengths of this style of play, is you can very easily split up your units in the early game as the Wehrmacht player and still be able to hold on both fronts, whereas in most normal early games, you really don't want to be splitting up as Wehrmacht because your opponent's just going to pick you apart over and over and over again. But when you have 6 tier 1 units...
Our front lines are collapsing.
I lost you there at the end there. I heard you say 6 tier 1 units. I wasn't exactly sure what you were saying.
I let go of my push to talk button and I completely forget where I was. So we're just gonna say we're just gonna say he's teching up to tier 3, and he has a lot of map control because it's very easy for him because of the number of tier 1 units he's got.
The Axis hold the initiative.
Yeah, you know, Symbiosis has put up a supply yard in his base, which is good, but now he's cut off and he has almost no fuel income. He certainly doesn't have enough to build anything, so he's got to reconnect. It's a very important strat point. Under fire from 2 very, very good-looking Volksgrenadier squads. His understrength rifles are going to try and fire from all directions down here in this hay bale just to the left of the lumber yard. This is going to be a big engagement. He has to win this. He has to reconnect his territory, and it looks like he may do it. One of the Volksgrenadiers has decided to go back to base, but you know what? There's an MG42 now backing up that German army, and now it looks like these rifles are going to be unable to seal the deal and reconnect this territory. My gosh, Symbi, he's lost pretty much all of the territory that he had gained so much in this early part of the game.
It really surprises me that Symbiosis has elected to go for his traditional passive style of play, which is something that works against a lot of players on a lot of maps, but Aljaz and his extended tier 1 makes it very difficult to put on the kind of pressure that Symbiosis needs to make that style effective, because he needs to be attacking, even if he's going to be losing manpower, in order to force his opponent off his cutoff. But when Aljaz has so many tier 1 units, he has so much damage output, it just becomes completely impractical to do something like that. And now he's gone tier 1 to tier 4 against Symbiosis in Sunday Night Fights.
That's unbelievable. It looks like Fir3ball is coming back with a vengeance. He clearly is pissed about how he lost the last game, and now he just does not want to have anything to do with that ever again. He's just going to lock this down with a hammer, and hopefully, I mean, if we're seeing tier 4 now coming out of his base, we can see, you know, one Ostwind could finish this off, could finish Symbi off easily.
Yeah, I mean, Symbiosis went for a weapon support center, which again is fairly standard in his style of play. But his style of play isn't really that effective against his opponent's style of play, especially in this situation on this map. And he's, I mean, what does he have to defend against that Ostwind? I mean, defend against anything. He doesn't really have anything at all.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is we're not seeing really any mistakes in micro. Tactically, these guys are playing very well. We haven't seen, there's been no squads lost, and actually there hasn't been a tremendous amount of manpower lost either. All of these tactical engagements should end up in a wash, but on a macro level, on a strategic, you know, metagame scale here, you're exactly right. Fir3ball is just outplaying Symbiosis' playstyle here, and it's just gonna be a loss here if Symbiosis doesn't switch things up right now, and I think it may be too late. I don't think that he can tech in the right direction to defeat what is inevitably going to be an onslaught of German armor in about 4 or 5 minutes.
Front shifting.
Yeah, he's in a really tough situation. I'm actually very impressed by how Aljaz Fir3ball has managed to push back so strongly after that devastating come-from-behind defeat to Symbiosis in game number 1. He knows this is the match and this is the map he absolutely has to win. If he loses this, he puts himself in such a terribly just such a terrible position overall. He knows that, and he's playing like he knows that, and it's very impressive to see him able to come back with such strength after such an overwhelming defeat in Game 1.
Yeah, especially because it was an embarrassing defeat. You know, it's like, I had that, and then it's gone. And it was like, what happened? So, it looks like he's, like I said before, he's ready to lock this down, put the hammer down on Symbiosis. And what do we have? Something's building in the tank depot.
Forward supply
I'm sorry, the
lines are
Panzer
broken.
Command. What's building in there?
It's an Ostwind, of course, and we have no AT, so it's going to be an ugly Ostwind because it's going to kill a lot of riflemen.
Yeah, there's not even any hope of any AT in the next couple of minutes. I mean, even if he put up his motor pool, it's still 4 or 5 minutes away before you see that first 57mm coming out. So this is doomed. You know, he doesn't have enough command points for Rangers. Not that that would even. Oh man, mines to the face right outside that center house. This is not good. Rifles now on retreat, trying to get focus fire down. They'll escape.
They're going
no
after
problem.
one of our munitions
But we've
points.
got Germans now capping American munitions
Base is
points
under
right
enemy
outside the
fire.
American base. So, faced with no map control and an Ostwind coming down the pipe here, I think Symbiosis is going to have a very bad time in the next. Well, here's that Ostwind. Hello.
Yeah, and to say this is a bad situation for Symbiosis is an absolute understatement. I mean, he was building something out of his weapon support center. He canceled it. That's essentially a wasted investment. He hasn't gotten anything useful out of there at all. He has no AT, and there's the GG. Very quick game number 2.
Wow, 12 minutes in, and now it's tied up 1-1. Germans take it. Fir3ball shows he can lock down Argenton Crossroads and sweep his opponent off the field. Congratulations to him. Game 2, we are going to Game 3, tied up 1-1. Budwise, please roll that video. Axis wins.